Just imagine a world that completely changes, literally overnight. We're talking about a terrifying economic crash that didn't just break the bank, it broke the very spirit of a nation. Today, we're going to dive deep into the Great Depression, an event that truly reshaped not just America, but the entire world.
That quote just perfectly captures the shock of it all. No war, no warning, just this giant financial abyss that opened up and swallowed a whole generation's prosperity. So how on earth did this happen? Well, to really get a handle on the collapse, we've got to go back to the wild party that came right before it.
All right, let's get into it. The Roaring '20s. The war was over and the American economy was just booming. Factories that used to pump out tanks were now churning out toasters, vacuums, cars, you name it. And people, they genuinely believed the good times were never, ever going to end.
And check out this number, because it really shows you how fast everything was changing. 10 million homes with radios by 1929. Think about that. And this wasn't just about listening to jazz music. No, this was about hearing ads for all the cool new gadgets you could buy. A whole new consumer culture was being beamed right into people's living rooms. But here's the thing. Underneath all that glitz, there were really two different Americas. In the cities, yeah, life was a party. You had electricity, new cars, and this new idea of buying things on credit. Buy now, pay later. But head out to rural America, and it was a totally different story. Farmers were really struggling. The demand from the war was gone, prices for their crops plummeted, and those shiny new tractors they'd bought with borrowed money, they were just helping them go broke even faster.
Okay, but the real heart of this whole mania? It was Wall Street. And this is where things get absolutely wild. You had these things called margin loans, and they let pretty much anyone feel like a big shot tycoon. You could buy $100 worth of stock with just $10 of your own money. The other 90, you just borrowed it because, hey, stocks only go up, right?
And that's exactly what it felt like. Everybody was in on it. You had shoeshine boys giving stock tips to bankers. People weren't really looking at company profits or anything like that. They were just watching the ticker tape. As long as that line was going up, that's literally all that mattered.
And then, just like that, the music stopped. October 29th, 1929, a day that would go down in history as Black Tuesday. And let me tell you, this wasn't some minor dip. The market performed a flawless dive straight into concrete.
Okay, so let's look at the chain reaction here, because it happens so fast. First, the market crashes. Immediately, brokers are making margin calls, basically screaming, "Pay us back the money we loaned you now." But the investors, they had nothing left. So the panic spreads to the banks. People start lining up, trying to pull out their life savings. But guess what? The banks had also been gambling in the stock market. And then to top it all off, US banks start demanding their money back from Europe. And just like that, the American crisis officially goes global.
The scale of this loss, it's just staggering. We're talking about over $200 billion in today's money. Poof, gone. And this wasn't just numbers on a screen. This wasn't monopoly money. This was real homes, real college funds, the entire life savings of millions and millions of ordinary people. And this disaster, it didn't just stop at America's borders. Oh no. The panic that started on Wall Street sent massive shockwaves across the entire globe, crippling economies that were, frankly, still pretty fragile after World War I.
So what was the result? Global trade, the very lifeblood of the world economy, it just choked. It dropped by half. Let that sink in, half, in just 3 years. The entire system was just grinding to a halt.
And yet, right in the middle of all this chaos, there was this incredible denial. You had newspapers running headlines like this one, trying to spin it, trying to paint a rosy picture. Politicians were out there insisting the worst was over, that the economy was fundamentally sound, all while millions of people were sitting at empty dinner tables.
But let's be clear, this wasn't just about numbers on a page or charts in a newspaper. Far from it. Beyond all the economic figures, this was a story of just profound human suffering. The real cost, you see, wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in hunger, in desperation, and in lost hope.
Just look at this jump. In 1929, unemployment was down around 3%. By 1933, it had skyrocketed to 25%. Think about that. 1 out of every 4 Americans who wanted a job simply could not find one. You had breadlines snaking for blocks through cities. Teachers were reporting that their students were fainting in class from sheer hunger.
And President Hoover's name, well, it became a kind of cruel shorthand for all this misery. People started talking about Hoovervilles. Those were the shanty towns they built from scrap metal and cardboard. Hoover blankets? That's what they called the newspapers people used to try and stay warm.
And a Hoover flag? That was an empty pocket, turned completely inside out.
And then, something just cracked. In 1932, thousands of World War I veterans, the country's heroes, marched on Washington. They were peacefully asking for a war bonus they had been promised. And how did the government respond? They sent in the U.S. Army with tear gas and bayonets. The whole country just watched in horror as its own heroes were driven out of the nation's capital. At this point, the nation wasn't just broke. It felt broken. People had lost faith in everything. The banks, the government, their leaders. The one crucial question on everyone's mind was, who, if anyone, could possibly lead them out of this wreckage?
Well, the answer came in March of 1933, and his name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. He didn't just come in with a bunch of nice words, he offered immediate, decisive action.
And with these words from his inaugural address, FDR gave the country the first real, deep breath it had taken in years. He was basically saying that the real enemy wasn't a broken economy, it was the paralysis of fear itself. It was a powerful call to action, and for so many, a restoration of hope.
And that action came fast through this whole series of programs that people called the alphabet soup. You had the CCC, which put young men to work planting trees. That was for immediate relief. Then the WPA built roads and bridges, which was about long-term recovery. The TVA literally brought electricity to entire rural regions. And so crucially, you had programs like the SEC and the FDIC, which were created to reform the whole broken financial system, to try and make sure a crisis like this could never, ever happen again.
But let's be real, recovery wasn't instant. It wasn't a flip of a switch. This was a slow, painstaking process. It was about rebuilding more than just roads and dams. It was about rebuilding a sense of national pride and purpose. And really, this sentiment, it was captured forever in that iconic photograph by Dorothea Lange. It kind of became the unofficial motto of the era. If you look into the eyes of the migrant mother, they don't say, "We're saved." They say, "We're surviving." It was this incredible testament to the quiet, powerful endurance of the American people.
Ultimately, there wasn't some big victory parade to mark the end of it all. The Great Depression really ended with the quiet hum of factories starting up again. It ended with blistered hands and tired backs, and with a collective, unspoken decision that the country, piece by piece, was going to pull itself out of the dust.
But just as America was standing back up, something much darker was already gathering on the horizon. As one crisis finally began to recede, another was building strength. The country was getting back on its feet, sure, but it was stepping right into the shadow of a new global conflict, one that would demand even more from a nation that had already endured so much.